Hey, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Professor Barry here, the next installation of Sociology of Pop Culture. Yeah, this week there's going to be some just different topic areas. We started off the term with sociological theory, application to popular culture, kind of moved into defining, explaining what is culture, what is popular culture. And now we're going to move into a couple different unique spaces. The first one, this idea of tastes that come out of the work of French theorist Pierre Bourdieu, Social Distinction, a book that he wrote, and we'll talk about that. Also, we'll kind of go over and talk about issues of representation and the power of representation. This is going to be something we'll focus on in a couple weeks from now. So this is just kind of a little bit of background to get the pump primed for some work later on. We think about representation, and then a couple different issues or topics to kind of explore is when we're talking about culture, we're talking about popular culture. I think we're going to need to address the topic of appropriation, like what is appropriation? How do we think about it maybe sociologically? And then an idea of cancel culture, which became language and an idea, and became part of conversations within the media, within our own communities. Like, okay, let's kind of unpack this idea of cancel culture using our sociological theories. So that's where we are going, four different themes. So the first one is the connection we're going to make here to popular culture is one of we are is one of about our own experiences, how or the experiences of an individual being shaped by the social world that that person occupies. That'll make sense here, more sense in a minute. And I'll kind of maybe start with an example. I'm drinking coffee this morning. I roast my own coffee beans. Just kind of enjoy doing that. Started doing that years ago. Started with a popcorn popper out in the front in the garage, and then kind of eventually got a small coffee roaster. Anyway, thinking about coffee, wine. Does somebody drink wine? What kind of wine do they drink? What brand of wine do they drink? What about beverages? What about sodas? What about bottled water? What kind of bottled water does somebody drink? What about a person's language, their use of cuss words, their not use of cuss words, their demeanor, their style, their walk, like all these different kind of things, right? Parts of who we are. It becomes part of our identity. And Bourdieu kind of focuses on an idea. I think I have an image here, or just name the book, Distinction, a Social Critique of the Judgment of Taste. And what Bourdieu is interested in is how we come to develop certain tastes, and our tastes are like, why do we do that? And where do those tastes come from? Part of it is what he talks about, this sort of this habitus, this field that we occupy. So we're socialized into a class, we're socialized into a region of the country, an occupation. We're developing a habitus, a way of thinking, a way of doing that's consistent with the norms, expectations, and ideas within that particular environment. So this is a social process versus individually determined. So I go, man, I like this coffee. This coffee is the minute I say this coffee is better than that coffee over there, that judgment is based on a habitus. And there's nothing objectively makes this coffee better than that coffee over there, but I'm making a claim, right? Or maybe even, I enjoyed the taste of this coffee more than that coffee over there. That's because it's been a learned thing. It's been associations. The same could be said for wines. I mean, is there something chemically compound different between, a certain class of wine versus another's? Well, there's something different. It's not that there's nothing different there, but it's the acquiring of the taste, the language of talking about wine, being able to talk about the grapes, being able to talk about, the body of the wine, being able to engage with the wine. Like that's all learned kind of things. And it's part of the field that a person occupies. And then we're going to get into, well, what motivates people to become occupied in those fields. So part of the habitus we develop is influenced by our social position, our class. Could be gender, could be region of the country. It's influenced by our social position. If somebody is an executive for a company, they're probably going to be exposed to hard liquors in a different way, different brands of hard liquors. I mean, beverages, food, different types of food, the language of food. People of occupying different social classes exposed to different things. So our habitus is it's movable, but yet it becomes pretty stable. I mean, we develop this habitus, this way of doing things that becomes pretty stable, and that's part because it's coming from our social position. And if we're staying in those social positions, that habitus can be pretty stable. And I think it's a lot unconscious. I mean, Bourdieu would say, a lot of our habitus is taken for granted. We develop a habitus. We even, individuals make claims. I'm sure I have before too, that, well, that beverage is better than that beverage over there. These claims, right? It means it's been taken for granted. These assumptions that we make, or we don't even think about, the foods that we eat. It's just what we like, and what we like is learned. It's part of that habitus. So there's a relationship between individuals and structures, and part of what the motivation for, or what influences our habitus, is we have a motivation. Part of that motivation is that we can gain capital. We can gain something, inclusion in a social group, and we want maybe inclusion in that social group to get to get something from that. So there's some value and benefit, social belonging, connection, or some other forms of capital, some mechanism that will increase our social standing or our social position. And we're going to talk about social and cultural capital on the next slide. So, this comes out of a book. If you're interested, the book's pretty dense, but I mean, it gets you into the details if you want to get into the details, or you can just look up some quick, videos on Bourdieu and social distinction. You'll get a nice summary that way as well, if you want more information. And Bourdieu talks about different types of capital. We have economic capital, right? The money that you have or that you can exchange. So your wages that you can buy things with that. We have economic capital. We also have cultural capital. So the language of wines, the knowledge of places around the world, knowledges of food, being able to talk the language of a particular group. This is all cultural capital. So, and there's different groups have different cultural norms, ways of being, different habitus. So there's that cultural capital. So to gain access to, let's say, the wealthy and the upper X%, it's more than just about having the economic capital. It's about having the cultural capital. It's about having the lifestyle, the language, the demeanor. And people sometimes, and could be very unconscious, work on developing that cultural capital to demonstrate that they're in that social position, or also to gain access to that social position. And then there's symbolic capital. Symbolic capital, just like the logos that we wear, be symbolic capital. The things that are around us are the physical objects, the artifacts. These are all markers of our social status and position. And being able to have knowledge of what that is all about is another thing. And then there's social capital, our connections. And we can use our connections to gain access to institutions, to jobs, employment, to gain our standing within a particular social groups, or is that social capital? And Bourdieu, in his writing, I mean, he did a lot of his research on, I believe it was the French military, before and after service. Somehow he got into this issue of what's going on, in this modern day world that we're living in. He was kind of disturbed by the fact that people are using capital in exchange for gaining access to higher status positions, like this interesting thing that's going on, that we're developing cultural, social capital and other forms of capital to do that. So we can link it to popular culture, and here's the connection, making these statements like, wow, man, that movie was, or that music is so great, what a great band, this is part of Habitus, or man, that was so horrible. I can't stand that music. There's certain genres of music I don't appreciate, and it's part of my habitat, my habitus. Um, and I've developed a taste for jazz music, and so that's part of a habitus. I mean, it's been influenced by my social position and background, and I'm sure there's a little bit of status and capital that's been developed in there, being able to be able to talk about jazz. It's part of the taste that developed over a period of time. I'm going to pause for a second. I can't pause. Yeah, I'm paused. I read this book recently. It's called Status and Culture: How Our Desires for Social Rank Creates Taste, Identity, Art, Fashion, and Constant Change. And for this author, everything that we do, or most everything we do, is something to do with status. I think the first couple chapters were really good, and then just like, man, does the detail to which he goes into and the language of talking about status is really complex. Really super fascinating. If you're interested, you may be able to find a podcast of him talking about this book and may get a lot of value out of that. And he references Bourdieu in that work. Okay, so that's theme number one. Now it's kind of moving into theme number two. We'll talk about representations and the importance of looking at representations. So to get there, I think we need to talk about the social construction of reality, so that this idea that the meanings that we give them have been constructed or developed within a culture, a place, a time, and there is no objective meaning for things, but they're socially constructed. So coffee doesn't have any inherent meaning to it. It's been the meaning that we give coffee has been constructed within an environment. The meaning that we attach to specific brands like Starbucks or an artisan coffee or McDonald's coffee. These have been constructed by within our culture, within our social networks. So nothing has any inherent meaning. We give meaning. We develop these ways of thinking through language, and we tend to view the world through these constructs. And constructs can get pretty stable. They get very shared upon meaning within a culture for a long, starting in the, like I said, for a long period of time, but starting in the probably like 1910s, 1920s, marijuana got associated with criminality, the marijuana menace, reefer madness, like all this stuff that was going on. These constructing these ideas, we could talk about politicians constructing these ideas, the general culture accepting these ideas. There's a racial dimension to these ideas about marijuana associated with criminality, and that lasted for a long time, right? It's a construct that marijuana is evil, it's bad, it leads to insanity, it leads to violent behavior. This is a way of thinking that was dominant within culture and society, is pretty stable for a long period of time from the 1910s until let's say 1960s thing. People were starting to started to challenge, and scientists were challenging this idea about the dangers of marijuana. And then 1970s, Oregon was the first state to decriminalize for a period of time. And then move on to where we're at today, where decriminalization and legal recreational use in most states. And so we're in a different constructed reality about marijuana. THC level compared to like 1960s of marijuana today is probably like, I don't know, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 times higher than it was back then. So we took a look at the THC amount in marijuana. You wonder about the harmful effects. To be more objective to make a claim today than it would have been in the past. But yet it's not about the objective reality is the point here. It's about the constructed reality. And we respond to the world based on that constructed reality. So meanings can become institutionalized. They become viewed as being real. Like you probably could in the 1930s tell people that marijuana is not harmful. In fact, it has some medicinal value. Most people would have probably thought that person was themselves not stable and just totally, ungrounded in their thought. So even though it's arbitrary and it's not objective, sometimes the meanings that we give things, it's very real because it gets institutionalized. People take it for granted. It becomes the reality. So even though it's not real, it's arbitrary, it's real because institutions, laws, people react to things based on this constructed reality. Excuse me. So we could think about I mean, one application here is that the media plays a role in constructing reality, right? TikTok, social media, the role in constructing reality of what we see and what we don't see is an issue of representations as well. So there's a lot of long body of research about media coverage on poverty. What's the story they tell? What are the images that are shown? And the general conclusion is that the news media covers poverty in a way that tends to individualize, tell stories about poverty or homelessness during times of Thanksgiving, um, during times of holidays, certain times of the year, and usually doesn't address the structural roots of things like poverty and homelessness, but it's the individual story, somebody moving out of poverty, right? And how that happens and the celebration of a story, which is great to celebrate the story of somebody in their life moving in a direction that they feel more empowered. But these stories, what researchers look at is what are the common narratives and common stories that are being told, and they have implications because we're constructing a reality that poverty is a individually caused thing, that poverty is we're not educating the public, or the media is not providing more detailed education to the public about the structural conditions that are influencing degrees of poverty, and that connects to social policy. So things like anti-poverty programs and things like that. If we create a picture and construct a reality that poverty is caused by individual work ethic, individual behavior, then that's going, if we construct that reality, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, right? That's the constructed reality. And then that starts to shape how we address these particular things. So it becomes really important. So I think you can get into degrees of awareness or deliberation by the producers, like the news content about, covering poverty. There's probably degrees of consciousness about that, the editors, the producers. I would gather or argue it's largely unconscious. People are telling stories the way that they think either the readers want to hear or watchers want to view, or it's what they believe is the story to be told, or it's unconscious level things, unconscious biases or views that get brought into it. Whether directors, writers, actors. I mean, I don't, it may not be intentional, but it still has an influence. Like it doesn't matter the intent, it still has an influence. So what gets printed, what doesn't get printed, what gets filmed, what doesn't get filmed, what gets aired, what doesn't get aired. Like all these are about institution, structure, process that we think about when we think about representations. And it could be that consumers are varying degrees of awareness about representations. How often are we aware that we don't see individuals with various disabilities represented in film? Like, how often are consumers actually aware of that? How often are consumers aware about the representation of people of age 70 and older in film, people of older people of color on film, older people with disabilities? I mean, how conscious are people aware of representation? And I don't know, there's varying degrees, and it could be people are hyper aware or more aware of representation of race, but not thinking about class. So there's different degrees of consciousness. Um, and you think about race, class, gender, sexual orientation, ability, status, age. I mean, just different representations, and representations matter, like how people are represented. Are they represented? What roles do they play? These become powerful because it starts to construct a reality or reinforce a reality about particular groups and particular people. Here's some data, and I linked an article. It's a recommended one in the module for this week. You can go through it if you want. It's the Annenberg School at USC and their media studies, and it's a long history of them examining the mass media. And they do a really comprehensive look at the roles with that of actors, and what are the characters and what kind of role do they play, and looking at the demographics of those characters and identifying, how things are working out in terms of representation. So super fascinating, interesting, and super powerful. All right, two more themes. One, cultural appropriation. If we're addressing, culture and popular culture, it's going to be important that we talk about appropriation. So we talk about appropriation, we're talking about like, okay, you have artifacts, material culture, or practices that people do within a culture, whether it's, dance or festivities or whatever those rituals and rites are that go on within a particular culture, that they're appropriated, they're taken from their original context and then applied somewhere else in a way that's not originally intended. So a particular behavior, a particular artifact, a particular symbol is taken is comes from a particular ethnic group or a particular ethnic group and is appropriated, moved over to this context, and now all of a sudden it's commercialized and it's moved into a different space and it's applied in ways that were not originally intended. Um, so like a dream catcher, that's not, of a that's something that's been mass produced, mass consumed. It's an example of cultural appropriation. The dominant group, oftentimes it's an issue of the dominant group in society, the dominant group, the group with more power, social power, economic power, who uses or appropriates something from a subordinate group, a group with less power, and uses it for either social or economic gain. Um, I'm kid you not, there's a convention that happens, I believe it's every year in Vegas, a convention of entrepreneurs and business folks who gather to look at what's going on in subcultures and across America and what is possible to appropriate from these subcultures to be able to market and sell. Because the cool stuff can sometimes be right found in subcultures. And so it's like this appropriate, like this intentional effort by business and industry to um, you know, appropriate clothing and fashion and music, whatever it may be, that appropriate that for economic gain without understanding or with a lack of care for the original, that culture and their use of that particular thing. So it minimizes, ignores the history and misrepresents a culture's history. If we go back to constructing reality, it reinforces sometimes, like with that dream catcher, reinforcing particular ideas in mass culture among the dominant group, perhaps about indigenous community, about the native community. And this becomes a challenge of cultural appropriation. At times, I think you could say there's a blurry line between what's diffusion, what's just kind of moving in culture, and what gets into appropriation. And I think it's important to recognize too is that it's not usually about the one object. It's about a collage of objects, or it's about the repetition and it's about the consistency. It's not about the one thing. I think this becomes challenging sometimes because there could be an example of appropriation that gets covered in the media, and then there becomes kind of a reaction like, why are people making a big deal out of that? It's just this thing. And it's like, well, it's one thing, but it's not really about the one thing. That's an example of something larger, something more systemic, something more powerful. So I think there's degrees of knowledge and engagement, the history and culture and understanding relationships of power. Once we get into this issue of grabbing or of appropriating something for economic gain or other gain, not respecting and valuing the history and the culture of a group of people, we're moving away from appreciation. We're into appropriation. There's a pretty powerful term came across recently by a cultural critic, and he talks about appropriation. It's like that's too kind of a word. This is racial plagiarism for him. It's about the stealing of culture for the dominant group or for the marketplace. So a different way of thinking about it. So there's a couple of images here. More companies are aware, as from a functionalist view, right? Our values are changing in society to some degree, our consensus of values. So things like selling this idea of pastoral communities, agrarian communities, having native image of a native person, like Land O'Lakes butter, like that's been removed. I would not say that's cancel culture. That's a shift in culture of companies being aware that about cultural sensibilities and cultural values regarding appropriation. Winnebago, it's like, okay, that's appropriation using that language, using that name. Like, why use that name for that particular vehicle? Again, it's not about just the Winnebago. It's like this consistency, this collage when we think about constructing reality. It minimizes the complexity of the native community within the native communities. It provides a stereotypical vision or picture of native communities. It's taking language and rituals and practices like the Sundance ritual, putting it into popular culture. It's appropriating that, and it's devaluing in some ways of the original use of that particular um, ritual. So I don't know, it's more difficult to recognize things, I think, in the present than if we go back to the past, we can look and go, man, it's clearly appropriation. Sometimes it's more difficult to recognize things in the present because the water we swim in. It's not the one thing, but it's the collage. And I think there's subjectivity, there's interpretation, right? We're all going to have perhaps different views whether something is appropriation or not. There could be a scale and a range. It's not like an on and off switch. It's like, well, it's kind of like appropriation, but it's not. Maybe it's a little bit of diffusion too. It's not like it's a sometimes an easy thing to say appropriation. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it may be more gray area in that space. Um, yeah, and so I think our culture or a culture understands appropriation in different ways across time and place. So our changing ideas about appropriation, more conversations about appropriation today says something about something's going on with our values and our sensibilities that are there. And I'd say that things like products and practices aren't just there. They have meaning and influence about representation, right? Ultimately, what we're kind of getting into. And then finally, this issue of cancel culture. I think it's important to talk about just because I think this term I think it's fascinating. I love language, of looking at language, and it's fascinating when new language pops up within culture. It's like trying to understand, like, okay, what is that all about? Like, what are we talking about? And so this issue, and social media created a new platform where if somebody made or a company engaged in homophobic, sexist, racist, transphobic comments, ideas, that they could be removed from platforms or lose their job and these kind of things. And this idea, the concern from the political right that individuals are being canceled, this is a problem. From the left, it could be something different, that these were individuals who are violating certain cultural values and ideas, and they need to be canceled from culture. But the word cancel, I don't know, it's interesting. Like, why is it called cancel culture? That phrase and that meaning. And when it first came up, I couldn't help but to go back to the politically correct movement of the 1980s that I was in college during those years. And there's like a lot of focus on, being politically correct. For example, you can't say, oh, I can't say disabled anymore. It's not politically correct. I got to say a person with a disability. This is what some people say. It's like, oh, we just have to be politically correct. And, it's like, well, I mean, culture's changing. Is it being politically correct or is it being respectful? Again, if we go back to this issue of cancel culture, there's going to be some gray area here. And I think, well, let me kind of define, I guess we've explained what cancel culture is. We're removing someone because of statement or an institution. But the question becomes one, who's being canceled? Why are we using the language of canceling? What is being canceled and why? There's an interesting short little write-up. It's in Canvas. You want to read it. And it addresses the issue of cancel culture versus okay culture. I thought it was really interesting perspective is that certain, individual made, sexist, racist comments in the past. It was nothing happened. I mean, it was like maybe handled institutionally, but now there's a different public face to that. And maybe as a community, we shouldn't be accepting individuals, we should accepting statements. There should be some recourse for individuals who demean and devalue other individuals. So there's this concern she raises about okay culture, that okay culture existed for a long time, and that we're moving to a different space where there's less tolerance for accepting things that are a violation for the sort of respect for the dignity of others. She also brings up the point in that write-up that sometimes there can be overzealous or it could go too far in terms of not giving individuals an opportunity to be able to to have some reconciliation or to be able to engage in conversation, that if we go too quick to, as a culture, too quick to removing individuals from institutions or from media platforms and things like that, we're not given an opportunity to continue on a conversation or for that person to be able to provide context or for some sort of reconciliation and remediation. There's no learning opportunity, right? And so she sees that as a particular problem. But what I want to introduce here, just sort of being aware of thinking about this idea of cancel culture or representation or all this stuff, thinking about our theories from a functionalist viewpoint, values are shifting in society, and that things that were acceptable in the past are not as acceptable today. It could be because our demographics are shifting. People of color, people of sexual orientation are the LGBTQ community in institutions having a voice, having a different voice, social media providing a different voice for people supporting LGBTQ plus community values and ideas. I mean, we live in a different cultural environment, and so our values are shifting, and so our practices need to shift along with that. It's more of a functionalist view. Conflict theory view is that this issue of power, right? So that culture is a site of power. It's a contest, and it's about the domination of one group, the group with the economic influence. And I think you could read from a conflict theory viewpoint is that the dominant group is being challenged, and it responded back by this idea of cancel culture. And so the dominant group, white, male, et cetera, dominant group is being challenged because they're the ones that are, more individuals who are more likely to be canceled. And this is a response back to call cancel culture to deflect any accusations from them. And then interactionism, it's the subjective thing, right? It's about meaning. We this language is shaping reality. It's influencing our construction of reality. Depending on your social position, you're going to have different views of what this language even means and how we think about it. And we respond to the world based on the language that we have. So that's an idea there. So for this week, there's a podcast, the last one from the Social Breakdown, just a nice little discussion about cultural appropriation. And there's some additional content in Canvas. There's a podcast of an author talking about race in the culture industries. I think it's really interesting. His perspective in general is that while representation is really important, representation in terms of being in the editor room or being in the newsroom, a person, have greater diversity, racial diversity in the newsroom, of writers or editors. His perspective is just changing the demographics isn't enough because these institutions have a bias built within them. And so you can have more people of color, but the stories still that are going to be told are going to be those, people of color, and the voices of color are not going to be supported. They're not going to be supported to tell certain kinds of stories. So there's an institutional limitation regardless of the demographics of individuals in that industry. Anyway, if you're interested, I think it's really interesting conversation and analysis that he has done looking at the racial demographics within the culture industries, the mass media and all these different things. All right, have a great day. Have a great rest of your week, and take care.